Tuesday edition. It's day 2 here at the DNC. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lyons. And joining us now is Lester Munson, BG Art Group Principal and Managing Director of the International Practice, Republican strategist who you frequently see here as one of our panelists on Balance of Power, who, yes, is in town for this Democratic convention. Are you part of some Oppo war room or something? What brings you to the Democratic Party?
Well, this is where the action is. It's also my hometown.
Okay.
And I came here hoping to see, a little street action, some convention action. Chicago at its finest. Couldn't stay away.
Got it. Well, it's going pretty well for you then, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I think Republicans would also say that it was going pretty well for them in Milwaukee at the RNC last week. It was a different race then. It was Donald Trump still thinking he was up against Joe Biden. And Republicans, frankly, pretty much universally that we spoke with, were feeling pretty good about their chances. Being here in Chicago, seeing the energy that Democrats are now bringing to this city, how much has your calculus changed?
Well, I think the Milwaukee example is a terrific reminder of how quickly hubris can be dissipated here in American politics. And I think Democrats should be at least a little bit cautious. Kamala Harris is not fully tested out on the campaign trail. This balloon is probably going to pop. This balloon of popularity is probably going to pop at some point. And how does she react then? How does she engage with Trump on the campaign trail? Can she match him blow for blow? Can she kind of match his negative energy? I suspect that's what we're going to be talking about in about a month or a month and a half.
Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have been compelled to stay on the trail this week. They've added events to sort of counter-program this convention. The former president will be in Michigan today talking about crime, for instance. Is that time well spent because they're having trouble breaking through the news flow?
Yeah, crime's an issue for sure, particularly here in Chicago, which is the murder capital of the United States, I believe, for like 12 years running. There's a certain civic anti-pride in that, I guess. So it's not a bad issue for the Republicans to be bringing up, but I think you're right. This force field of Democratic optimism about their ticket is very strong, and it doesn't seem to be getting through into the United Center at all.
Well, and frankly, that isn't unique to just this week in Chicago that Trump has had to try to counter-program. It's been basically a month of coverage since Kamala Harris became the Democratic presumptive nominee, that she has really overshadowed Donald Trump in a lot of ways. And perhaps you're seeing some of that frustration borne out in the news conferences he's decided to hold, et cetera. Is it working, Lester? What does he need to do differently?
I think it's interesting. I think Trump himself is not doing well. He's kind of following his own instincts and talking about silly things like he's better looking than Kamala Harris or some ridiculous argument like that. Vance is actually going after the issues that are probably better for Republicans. So even though Vance's popularity may be an issue, he's a more effective kind of counter agent to what the Democrats are doing right now. I wonder if Trump, after the near-death experience, has kind of decided he's just going to go his own way and do what he wants to do and not listen to his handlers anymore. His handlers were doing pretty good up until that assassination attempt, but since then, he seems to have kind of lost his mojo. Your
background brings a specialty in foreign policy, and we've got a pretty big story cooking this week with real developments, it seems, in ceasefire talks in Israel. What do you make of the White House coming out with this yesterday? The Secretary of State, we've got a framework, but actually, once again, it's not a deal. Benjamin Netanyahu, I guess, signed off on it. Hamas has a different agenda here, and this might not come together. Were they trying to land an announcement of a ceasefire during this convention?
It's hard to think that they were going to do this incredibly complicated negotiation and have it land, on this moving aircraft carrier of the DNC convention in these 4 days. So I suspect that's not it. I was very interested that the administration made the announcement about Hamas having to accept this deal during this convention, which potentially provokes some of the protesters on the streets here in Chicago. I thought that was actually courageous by the folks who are working the administration these days, and good for them.
Well, when we consider the policy stance around the ongoing war, whether or not there's a ceasefire in place by November or not, there does seem to be a perception within the Democratic Party that Kamala Harris is more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, more willing to go harder against Benjamin Netanyahu. But she, too, has been part of this Biden administration that has been so heavily criticized for its conduct. So do you really believe there is nuance in the approach here between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Because it's been described as by John Kirby, for example, as no daylight between them.
Right. I think right now she's allowed to have it both ways. She can be allied with Joe Biden and his support for the state of Israel while saying she's a voice for the Palestinians and the concerns of the protesters. She's trying to have it both ways. I don't think that's sustainable for 90 more days into the election. but we'll see if she's held to account for that.
One of the moments that endures from last evening was Sean Fain of the UAW. We spent a lot of time together on this program talking about the UAW strike. He's, of course, endorsed Kamala Harris. His T-shirt read, "Trump is a scab." Is that the kind of rhetoric for the moment?
Well, I think, this is going to be a vibe election or a meme election or even a name-calling election. And even Steve Kerr last night, who is, of course, a member of the Chicago Bulls championship teams here and is beloved in the city for that, famously fought with Michael Jordan in a practice, pretty good coach, got the gold medal.
Fresh off the Olympics.
He was fresh off the Olympics. He did a great job of taking the high road for 6 minutes, but kind of delivered kind of the negative message at the very end of what he was saying. So I think even the best messengers are not immune to what is going to be a very negative political campaign here.
Well, in a lot of ways, after the conventions are over, the way in which that negativity will be circulated, to your point, may be online, it may be over the airwaves in TV ads. Something else we have to consider here is potentially the massive financial advantage that Kamala Harris could have over Donald Trump. And that's frankly true of the Democratic Party, be it the congressional or Senate committees versus the Republican counterparts. Lester, how do you think about the money equation here and how that makes things more difficult for Republicans all over the ballot?
Well, I think Democrats need more money to be competitive against a guy like Donald Trump, who is, frankly, so good at getting free press and getting when his message is on and he's getting where the voters are, he can do it for free. Democrats have struggled with that. Hillary Clinton outspent him 2 or 3 to 1 back in 2016. He still managed to win that election. So I think Democrats need that infusion of cash to be competitive with him. And so I think that's a large part of the reason.
So the money makes this a wash, basically?
I think in a way, I think it makes it a wash. You've got paid media and earned media. Republicans are a little better at the earned media right now, frankly, whatever you think of their message. Democrats are better at the paid media. That does kind of equal things out.
Interesting. What's got your attention in the next couple of days as a Republican watching this Democratic convention?
So I went to see the protests yesterday at the park where they designated for the protesters to be about half a mile away from the United Center. And there's a lot of police activity there. It looks like everything's under control. The Chicago police are using it as an opportunity to launch their own protest against the way they're being treated by the city government here in the city of Chicago, where they have real disagreements with the mayor. So I love the fact that it's really the local politics at the end of the day that matter on the street here, not the national politics.
This is Chicago, right? That's the way this goes. Lester, thanks for meeting us in your hometown. Lester Munson with us on Balance of Power. Unions, as we're discussing, a key focus here at the Democratic National Convention that certainly came about last night. One of the first unions to endorse the Harris-Walz ticket, the aforementioned United